Hello, hello, hello. I'm Matt Williamson. We are gearing up for Steelers at Broncos. And yesterday we really broke down when Denver has the ball. We're going to dig right in now to when the Steelers have the ball. Denver gave up 5.8 yards per play last year. Only two defenses were worse. On early downs, first and second, they gave up 6.1 yards per play. That was last in the NFL. That's going to be huge, getting early down chunk runs. They also allowed just on 371 yards per game. That was 29th in the league. The Steelers produced just 4.1 yards per play, though, in Atlanta last week, which isn't great. How about this? The Steelers' 37.9 pass rate in week one was the lowest in the league. When they did throw, the Steelers utilized a league-high rollout rate. And that was something we talked about, but I didn't know it was league-high. Makes Fields comfortable, moving right or left, The Steelers' offense used 13 personnel, one back, three tight ends, on a league-high 30% of their snaps. Not only was that highest in the league, but the next closest team, the Chargers, were only at 16.7%. That's a ton. A ton. Steelers aligned under center for 33 of 66 plays and used play action on the majority of their dropbacks, 52%, for the first time since next generation stats were created in 2016. First time since 2016 that they used play action more often than not on their dropbacks. I've been harping on this for 6 years. Only the Colts used play action a higher percentage of the time than Pittsburgh. This was a career high for Justin Fields in play action percentage. The Steelers used 36% more play action in week one than they averaged last year, night and day. And how about this? Last year, Denver allowed the highest completion percentage, 76%, against play action passing last year. So bad. Fields didn't attempt one pass last week between the numbers. He also had a 3.06 second average time to throw in Atlanta. So for reference, all quarterbacks with at least 250 passing attempts last year, that would have been the highest time to throw. Fields, not coincidentally, he was at 3.02 last year. That was highest in the league last season. However, Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts had higher times to throw than Fields in week one. Got to get out quicker. Last year in a Bears uniform, Fields was 28 of 35 for 335 yards against the Broncos and threw 4 touchdowns in that game. Probably was his best game, definitely was his best game ever passing, was against the Broncos. Gotta love that. I mean, how could you not? He's got to be familiar against this opponent, and the defense isn't that much different. Maybe it's even better. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From NFL to college, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head over to Online Casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today and use the promo code BELIEVE, capital BLEAV, all caps, and get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. So I've dug up a bunch of, there's a lot of these mostly fantasy, but analytics sites are working on separation scores. How open are your receivers? I'll just tell you, Pickens was at the top of the list last year. And go check out my Twitter, @WilliamsonNFL. I just retweeted a chart that shows how good he was. But he received 32% of the Steelers' targets in week one. Only 5 pass catchers around the league had a higher team target share. He aligned in the slot 13 of his 47 snaps, and saw all his production, but all his production did come on snaps when he was aligned outside the numbers. I'm not looking too much into that, but I love that he aligned in the slot that high percentage. That being said, 65 wide receivers around the league ran more routes than Pickens in week 1. Steelers just didn't throw the ball that much, and he came out once in a while. Patrick Surtain, who I think is probably the best corner in the league, right with Sauce Gardner, shadowed DK Metcalf last week on 24 of his 25 routes run. He was the nearest defender on all of Metcalf's targets, allowing just 3 receptions for 29 yards. I don't know if he'll follow Pickens into the slot, but I'm betting he will. Pat Freiermuth ran a route on 75% of the Steelers' dropbacks in Atlanta, but when Pittsburgh was in 12 personnel, Freiermuth was only on the field for 6 of a possible 18 snaps with 2 tight ends. 19 tight ends ran more routes than Freiermuth in week 1. Pittsburgh's running backs were targeted just 4 times in Atlanta. That's going to go up, I have a feeling. Last year, the Steelers only allowed 2.1 sacks per game. Only 7 offenses were better. Last week, Fields was only sacked twice. But Jonathan Cooper, they have a good group of edge rushers. Cooper, Benito, Browning, they're not household names, but they're good speed guys off the edge. Cooper had 2 sacks and 4 quarterback hits in Seattle last week. Run game. So from week 9 to 18 last year, the Steelers averaged 145.2 rushing yards per game. That was 5th most in the league, and had 13 rushing touchdowns. That was 2nd most. In Atlanta, they ran for 137 yards. Although one of those carries was a minus 10-yard carry by George Pickens. So basically, we're in the same neighborhood as they were from week 9. Last year, the Broncos allowed 5.1 yards per rush attempt, the worst in football, and allowed the 2nd most yards per game to the running back position. Kenneth Walker rushed for 103 yards against Denver last week. Najee carried the ball 20 times in Atlanta. He only reached that number of carries twice in 2023. Harris received 31 of a possible 43 early down snaps, 1st and 2nd down. Harris is aiming for his 5th straight game with 75 or more scrimmage yards. How about this? Harris has 999 touches in his 4 seasons, the most of any player in the league during that stretch. 999. On 3rd downs, Jaylen Warren was on the field for 9 of a possible 14 snaps. They just didn't use him much. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I think that'll spike a lot. But he was out there on 3rd downs. The Steelers' 3.3 yards per rush attempt was only better than the Panthers, Raiders, and Dolphins in week 1. Only the Commanders and Bucks created less rushing yards per carry after first contact. That needs to improve. Last week was Fields' 19th career game with 50 or more rushing yards. He is one of 2 quarterbacks in history with a minimum of 5 starts to average 50 or more rushing yards per game. Lamar Jackson's at 61.8. Fields is at 55.5. 75% of Fields' 57 rushing yards in Atlanta came after first contact. So we talk about after first contact. The backs didn't create much, but Fields did. The Broncos defense recorded 2 safeties in Seattle in week 1. They are the 5th team in NFL history to lose a game in recording 2 safeties. That's hard to do. Surtain is the only rostered Broncos defensive player that was drafted in the 1st round. That's mind-boggling to me. Like, even a bust from another team or someone you signed, there's just no pedigree on their defense. Fields has never won more than 2 games in a row as the starting quarterback. That's not great. He does not have a great record. But hey, he's on a 1-game streak. Can he make it 2? I think he will. I'm predicting the Steelers will win this game 16-10. If they lose, it'll be turnovers. It'll be lack of efficiency on offense. It'll be too many sacks taken by Fields, a bad pick here and there. Game is close in the 4th quarter, and Steelers are huffing and puffing and allow a big gain or something goofy on special teams. But I truly believe the Steelers are the far superior team here. Besides Surtain, I think the biggest obstacle to winning is the environment. I've told you many times, their record early in the year is remarkably good. But I think the Steelers handle business. I think their depth on both sides of the ball will help them quite a bit stay fresh for 4 quarters. And that's just kind of how they're built. And Fields worries me a little bit in this one, just because we haven't seen a lot of the bad. We've seen a little, botch snaps, things like that. But he has to be conservative / handling his business, controlling the football, not putting in harm's way as a runner or passer. I'm assuming Fields is going to start. So there you have it. I will be back right after the game, and I'll be on the pregame show. Check that out and give you my initial thoughts, and we'll do our usual stuff. All right, take care.